Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining and taking the time today to listen to me talk about international markets. This is, the first in the series, the WebSeries Stay-at-Home Edition that the IWCC is doing. So on behalf of all of the other IWCC board members, I want to thank you for coming. Yes, I'm using Rodney. Rodney is the president of the IWCC, and I'm currently logged in as Rodney. So it doesn't show me, but I'm here. I am Rodney. Not actually, but yes. Oops, sorry. So yes, today we're going to be talking about international markets, I like to call the networking factor. And I'm your presenter. My name is Leah. For those of you who don't know me, I am on the board of directors for the IWCC. I'm a producer, director. I'm also an author. I do editing. I do a lot of things. So my bio is pretty hefty, so I'm not going to give you the entire blurb of who I am, but I think you'll get a sense of who I am from today if you don't know me already. So let's get started. Today, let me make sure I'm actually in the right window. There we go. What we're going to talk about are a few things. So choosing the right market for you, the financial investment for these markets, which I'm sure all of you are needing to know or wanting to know, the process of planning and setting up meetings, speed pitching, post-market strategies, and relationship building. So those are kind of the main talking points that I'm going to be discussing today. Hey, Divya. Divya's another, and James, hello. Thanks for joining. So those are the main topics of discussion. Obviously, full disclaimer, any market event that's happening that was supposed to happen this year is no longer happening or is being done digitally. So, or at least most of them are at this point. So, of course, a lot of what I'm saying today really only applies for when you're in person, but I think it's still good to know, even if things become just a digital situation or whatever, these are skills I'm going to talk about and things that I'm going to talk about that can apply across the board and hopefully be helpful in other situations as well. So, hopefully you'll get enough out of it that it won't just apply to events. But yes, of course, due to the situation that's happening in the world right now, it's a bit limited. So let's get into it. But before we start, I want to do some agreements. So the tips I'm giving today are based on what I did and what I'm currently doing. So there's not the only correct way of doing things. So, you can do it how you will. This is just my viewpoint and my sort of take on things. So feel free to take what you will. The slides, are they going to be available afterwards? They can be. I can make them available if that's a desired thing that everyone wants. Sure, no problem. Okay, great. Yes, I will make them available. So this is going to be an interactive webinar. So you've already started, but please participate in the chat because I want this to be more, as much as we can, make it a conversation. I want it to be a conversation. So there's a drill I want to do. This is something that my coach actually does in every one of his webinars, and I love it. So everyone just, bear with me here. Let's do this. So I want you all to take a deep breath in and inhale for as long as you can. So, and count the seconds that you inhale for and type it in the chat. How long were you able to inhale for? I think my max, I've done like 12 seconds. Okay, 7 seconds, Lindsay. 1 Mississippi, yeah. 5, 13, wow, Patrick, nice. 4, yeah, it's not easy. You gotta 14, wow. Nice. 21, Ronnie, you have lungs of steel. Yoga, yeah, that's true. 12, nice, nice. So the reason we do this drill is because normally when you're on webinars and any learning situation, you're intaking a lot of information, you're inhaling. And obviously at a certain point, you do have to exhale. You do have to let out breath. So the reason for participating in the chat is your way of exhaling. So, ask questions. I have the chat window right here so I can see. I'll do my best to kind of keep track as I'm talking, but please do participate because you need to exhale. That is the moral of that drill. So please do that, okay? Can everyone agree to that? Just type yes or no. Yes, yes, awesome. Great. Cool, amazing. And the last agreement is to share a win on social media when the webinar is done. And please do tag WebSeries Canada, which is IWCC's social handle, and myself, which is LE_Rifkinator. Please share wins at the end of this, okay? Can we all do that? It doesn't have to be a super long paragraph, just something that you got out of today. Yes? Great. Deal. Awesome. Sweet. Okay, awesome. Great. So first things first, I want you to tell me about you because I want to get a sense of the room. So please write in the chat what you do, if you're a writer, director, producer, whatever you are, and answer yes or no if you've ever attended international markets. I just want to sense who's here. Okay. Actor, producer. Yes to markets. American film market, cool. College professor, nice. Banff, nice, okay. So some of you have, some of you haven't. Okay. Only done small New York pitch sessions, that's okay, all right. Attended American Film Market, film festivals. Yeah, film festival, film markets count. Cool. All right. So it's kind of a half-half situation, but I think more people have attended some kind of market like this. So that's great. Cool. So markets. There are dozens of events, as I'm sure most of you know, there are dozens of events that happen every year. These are just some of them. I've been to 4 of the 7 that are listed here. But the big question is, how do you know which is the right one for you? That's kind of always the decision because obviously it's an investment to go to these events. So how do you pick and choose what makes sense for you? So that hopefully you'll get a better sense of that after today. And if not, well, feel free to talk to me after and hopefully I can help you. But hopefully today will give you some more insights into the more of the international events. So not necessarily North America only, but elsewhere in the world. So choosing the right market, I wanted to say there are 3 things that I personally focus on when I'm choosing which market to go to. So the first thing is content. What kind of content are you working on? So is it, film, TV, scripted, unscripted? That really dictates where you go. So obviously some of you have been to American film market. That's mainly feature film based. So you're not going to necessarily go there and talk to people about a web series. You could try, but it's kind of not necessarily the correct forum to do that. So content really does dictate where I go oftentimes. The next thing is goals. What do you want to achieve? Is it sales? Is it distribution? Is it finding production partners? Is it all of the above? Are you just kind of going to build a network and see what happens? You kind of have to have a specific goal in mind because that really does help narrow down the list of where you should take your stuff. And then of course, the last thing is the global strategy. So who do you want to connect with? Is it people in North America, Asia, Europe, Latin America, Africa? Obviously, within those spaces, there's tons of options. Me personally, I've been focused a lot on Asia as of late. So I've gone to Asian markets and met a lot of people in that international space, but I've also met a lot of people in Latin America as well and kind of been chatting with people there. So you kind of have to see where your goals are and really where your passions are. For me, I got sort of, in a way, addicted to South Korean television content. Not just the K-pop space is its own thing, but the television space they're just really creative with what they do. And I just grew a sort of liking to it. And that kind of just got me interested. So that's kind of where I've been putting my focus. So you just kind of have to look at which areas you're interested in. Can you guys write in the chat if you kind of have a sense of which parts of the world you're interested in, just so I have a sense? Could be country specific as well. Like for me, in Asia, but specifically Korea. North America and Europe. No specifics. Okay. Worldwide. North America, Europe, North America. Cool. Well, a lot of my experiences are with North America, but I do have a lot that are outside of there too. So hopefully I'll get a bit of both. You'll get a bit of both today. But those are the kind of main things that for me, when I'm looking at where I want to go, what I do. So I literally write out on paper, you know, this is my project. This is the goal I want for it, who I might want to connect with, and this is the market, because that really, cool, UK, Australia. So that really helps me kind of determine where I go. But the other thing that actually does kind of help determine is sometimes for me, I've seen an opportunity to apply for something at one of these markets that I wasn't necessarily considering. Like Real Screen West, for example, is an unscripted television market. I just applied, I'll talk about it a bit later, but I applied for something there for fun, not really expecting anything to come of it. And it kind of catapulted a huge jump for me in making connections and doing stuff in the unscripted television space, which I honestly wasn't planning on. It just kind of happened because I applied for this thing for fun. So sometimes it does happen not with a strategy. It's just kind of you do things that look interesting and it opens doors for you. So that's another way you can do it. But I will talk about that a bit later. So I'm going to talk about the investment. Yeah, the unexpected, exactly. What you can expect to pay. So I'm sure a lot of this is obvious to you, but I want to kind of go through it. The market fee, the cost of attending, obviously is usually one of the biggest costs. For me, on average, I've paid about $1,500 to attend events, but it depends on if you're going as an attendee or if you're going to book a booth or a small booth or a big booth. Like that changes the cost too. So you kind of have to look at what your options are. I've attended events in both capacities, either just as an attendee, like as a delegate, and I've attended others where I've had an actual, not a big booth, but a booth there to meet. So that does kind of dictate how much you're going to pay for the actual market fee. Then there's, you know, the travel costs, the flights, the taxis, all of that you have to take into account. The accommodation, to be honest, I've rarely stayed in the hotels where the events actually happen. I've always usually either stayed in Airbnbs close by or hotels that are cheaper a bit further out, and I've just taken cabs or something to the venue, because a lot of these venues they just jack up their prices for these events. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. Obviously, it's nice if you live in the city that it's happening, but often there's never events in Toronto. So I'm going to like LA, New York, you know, New Orleans, you know, South Korea, and I'm having to stay in places there. So Airbnb is a really good option. The only thing with Airbnb and things like that is you have to book early, because a lot of the places, like my experience in France, for example, those places book out fast, because that is MIPCOM is one of the biggest events that happen in the year, and it just, everything goes. So you have to book really early. Most of the time I've never found one that's super close to the actual venue. I've always had to take cabs. So definitely one tip I can give is if you're going to a place you've never been, like my first time going to Cannes for MIPCOM, I made the mistake of not booking early enough. Don't make that mistake, because you will find a lot better places in like walking distance than if you book, you know, like 3 weeks before or a month before. So yes, of course, meals, you definitely want to eat. I've thought in my head that I would be able to, you know, create meals at home or something, or like buy food and then make meals. Yeah, don't do that. It doesn't work. You want to just have money to buy food, because things, you just have to move fast. So that, and what I like to call schmoozing moolah, which is basically money to schmooze with people. Luckily, I've had, you know, not had to spend so much on that front, but you want to have like a little in your pocket for that. So those are the kind of covering what you can expect to pay for generally. Are there any questions so far about anything? If not, I will just continue. I'm going to cover a lot, so if nothing, okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So we're going to go into setting up meetings. So it's usually the same for every event, as I'm sure some of you know. There are 3 easy steps that I find you do. So step 1 is you look through the database, because anytime you pay for these events, you get put into like a delegate database. Here's a screenshot of one from Real Screen Summit. I can't remember which one. And usually you have access to that, exchange forum for a year. Usually is the deal that you sign up for, so it's kind of nice. But basically, I always my process is I look through delegates, and there's often hundreds of them, and then I basically flag or open tabs of the ones that I want to meet with. So I'll click on, Carol Ann's bio, and just literally just open them all up, and then I'll go through again and filter them down after that. And I usually filter them by, if it's a specific company or if it's a specific title. Usually I end up going for development people because that's who I end up talking to, but sometimes you want to talk to salespeople or distributors. So you just have to choose who you want to talk to. The next step would be to send a message to the ones you want to meet with through the messaging system. Honestly, you guys can tell me your experiences with messaging systems, but they're not that advanced. So there often are some glitches with like typing text. Like you can see here, like a question mark just like showed up at the beginning. I don't know why. But I do send messages through this system because it's often the only way you can, unless someone put their email directly there on their bio, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But either way, if you send the message through this system, they will get the message, because they get an email notification when people send the messages. So that's the next step. And the last step is, hopefully once you get a reply, you set up a meeting time and fit it into your personal schedule. And I really, really highly suggest really going through and actually using the system that's there to create a schedule, because like this for me was my schedule for when I went to Real Screen Summit, or day 1 of Real Screen Summit. It was like the first day. So I always schedule in everything and I print off the schedule, because I learned the hard way of not kind of doing that to the level that I should have, and it really was a bad idea. Like you definitely want to have a schedule, so highly suggest you do that. So once you have meetings set up, once you get to the event, you actually have to have the meeting. These are 4 tips that I want to give on meetings. I'm sure you guys have heard this a million times, but it's seriously true, is be punctual. I always say to be early is to be on time. If you want to be late, go for it. But I think it's always better to be there early. And then if the person that you're meeting is late, fine, but you should be there on time. One thing I actually forgot to mention about a comment, like paying for things, is there was a cool opportunity, which you guys should keep an eye out for, with international markets, not ones in North America, ones outside of North America, is when I went to the Busan Contents Market, which is one that happens in South Korea, I found out they had a deal. Basically, they were getting people to pay $1,000 to go, basically to give you a ticket to the event, and they cover your flight and expense, your accommodation for the event. And I was like, deal, because that's huge savings. And the reason they want that is because they want North American delegates and companies there. So it was a smaller event, but it turned out to be a really great event, because I got to meet all like major broadcasters and stuff there, and from Asia and stuff. So paying that $1,000 was a huge deal. And it's really worth it. So I would really look into and keep an eye out for like markets that happen outside of North America and English speaking countries, because they often have funding for this kind of thing. So really, I highly suggest you keep an eye out for that stuff. Anyway, back to meetings. Second is come prepared. You want to have your materials ready to go. I'm just going to show you some materials. Can you guys see this? I hold stuff up. Can you guys see it? Let me know in the chat, please. Not clearly, not really. Okay, it looks like it's backwards, but at least for me. But anyway, I print off my materials and in like a booklet like this. This is my slate, so I always have my development slate printed out in a document for people to see, because even though I'm meeting with someone for one particular project, they might be like, what else do you have? And then I'm like, well, here you go, have a look. So I always print out my slate. I found that that's actually really helpful. And then for specific projects, I have always liked this kind of length setup, not the regular 8.5 by 11, although I do have some documents that I've created for that format, like 1-pagers, 1-sheets, back to back. And I always get them professionally printed. So that's my other suggestion. Pay the money to get things professionally printed. But yes, I always have physical visuals, because it's one thing, yes, to have a laptop, and you should have a laptop with like video if you have it, or all backups of your like your printed files on your laptop in case, God forbid, whatever happens. But I really highly recommend you have physical copies of things, because when in a meeting, it's like people are very kind of hands-on. It's nice when people can touch something and feel something. It's not to say that they're going to keep it. They probably won't. They're probably going to throw it out after. But in the meeting, it's good to have. So I always usually print out a handful of everything. So you definitely want to be prepared when you come to a meeting with that stuff. The last two are kind of obvious, but also I find with a networking situation, a lot of people have a problem with, especially, independent producers and independent people who aren't necessarily used to going to these events, is you want to be confident and personable. Aside from the elevator pitch, like saying, what your project is all about and talking about it, it really is just a conversation, and you're getting to know people. And honestly, these people are talking to so many people during the day. They don't want to just be yapped at by you. Like, they just don't want to hear the pitch the whole time. Like, you want to kind of have a bit of small talk. So you really need to, I think that comes with being really personable and confident in who you are, and not just your content, but who you are. I think that really comes across and makes a big difference in pitches. And I think that's allowed me to go even further with meetings, because I had that confidence and sort of level of calm. But trust me, it didn't start out that way. When I first went to MIPCOM, disaster. Like, it was disaster is a bit dramatic, but I was very nervous. And I think at least in the first few meetings on the first day, I knew afterwards, I'm like, wow, I was really nervous in that meeting. So I kind of learned to just, okay, I gotta really step up my game here, because it is, especially MIPCOM, and that was like the first international market I went to. It's overwhelming. MIPCOM is I'm actually glad I went to that one first, because it just literally threw me in the deep end. So if you've never been to an international market, I would suggest going to MIPCOM first, because you'll learn a lot there, and it's the biggest one. But yes, so the one thing actually I wanted to say is, at MIPCOM, just as a tip, if you do go, have any of you been to MIPCOM? No, right? None of you have been to MIPCOM before? No? No. Okay. Yeah, it's huge. If you've been to Cannes, and the famous sort of place where everything happens in Cannes, it's gigantic. And that event in particular has like 14,000 or 15,000 delegates that go. It's insane. We take over Cannes, let's just put it that way. It's huge. So, and the meetings, there's not just one section that everything happens. Like, you have to literally, I'm not kidding, run from place to place to get to meetings. So you have to be, so that's why I was saying punctuality, like, especially at those kinds of events, you want to schedule things strategically. Like, give yourself 10 minutes to get to your next meeting. Otherwise, I'm not kidding, you will be out of breath. like, I'm here. Hi. Like it's, and girls don't wear heels. I made that mistake at MIPCOM. It was a bad idea. Wear flats, something comfortable, not necessarily sneakers, but just something comfortable. Heels, bad idea. Nix the heels. Unless it's like a one-time cocktail event in the evening, just do not wear heels, girls. It's not helpful for your feet. So I want to talk a bit more about pitches because, and I'm sure a lot of you are interested in things like speed pitching, and I've done quite a lot of that at these international markets. So I just want to break down the process quickly. First, you do a check-in. Like most things at these events, you have to check in for everything. So you want to do this because they want to know that you're actually going to show up for your speed pitch, because if you don't show up or if you're late, someone could take your spot. So you really, and I'm not kidding, like I think one point I was like pretty close to, I wasn't late, but I was like cutting it close. And I realized after that one time, I'm like, no, I got to show up early because someone could take your spot if yes, the recording's going to be saved. Someone could take your spot if you're not there. So you definitely want to check in on time. You usually have to wait about 15 to 20 minutes before the speed pitching actually starts. And this is actually a great time in terms of networking. We're talking about networking. It's a great time to talk to the people next to you. I've met some really wonderful people just in the waiting area for these speed pitches. And it is kind of a nice way to kind of break the tension in the room because everyone's so nervous. I'm usually never nervous for these, but most people are. So kind of talking to them and letting them talk to, like, just say something instead of keeping their nervousness internal, it actually does help liven up the situation. So I really do suggest actually talking, saying hello to people next to you. And you also never know who's sitting next to you, so that's another reason to do it. And then once your group, because they usually separate you into groups, so it's like my past experiences, it's been like 6 groups or 12, because they do like 6 groups, but then they change it to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So they do one group at a time. Basically, you want to have all your stuff ready to go. I have my pitch documents. I usually have a pen ready, or my phone to like type something in, and I have my business card. And you not run to the table, but briskly make your way to the table where the person is sitting that you're going to be pitching to, because my experience is it's only been 3-minute pitches. Y'all, 3 minutes goes by fast. So you want to it is this kind of a situation where you get in and get out. So you want to be ready. You don't want to be fumbling for stuff when you go in there. It's just also professionalism thing. And the last thing is you want to make sure, this is the key thing, you want to make sure to get their business card, because granted, the courtesy usually is that they will give you their business card anyway. But if honestly, I feel like there probably are times where if they're really not feeling it, they won't give you their business card. So you want to try and get their business card. That's kind of the goal, because even if you give yours to them, they're probably not going to follow up with you. So you want to get their information for sure by the end of that speed pitch. So before I get into these particular pitching experiences, did anyone have any questions particularly about speed pitching? I do have a story I can tell as well about pitching to History Channel, if you guys are interested in hearing that story. Should one practice? I'll tell it. Okay, well, should one practice? I never practice for speed pitches, to be honest. I don't practice for any pitches. Okay, that's a lie. I practice so I'm comfortable enough saying the elevator pitch for my project, but I don't practice anything else. I usually just kind of go off the cuff. But honestly, when I first started, you just kind of find a way to talk about your projects that works. And that comes with practice. Like, I wasn't good at it to begin with. I had to just do it a lot, and then I kind of learned what worked for me. Best pitch and best and worst pitch experience. Well, I haven't really had any bad pitches necessarily that stand out, which is, I guess, a good thing. But I did a pitch recently at Real Screen Summit, which happened in New Orleans in January. And I pitched to one of the speed pitches, which those sections, there's usually like 10 to 12 people that you can choose from to pitch to, and you set them up ahead of time. I never end up meeting with everybody because I just don't have stuff to pitch to everybody. So I had, I think, 3 or 4 people that I was pitching to at Real Screen Summit. And one of them happened to be History Channel, because I had a cool project that I was like, let's see if they're interested. And honestly, for that one, it was really early stages, but I'm like, hey, screw it. I'm just going to see if they're interested, because you never know. And I'm glad I did, because, and I honestly was hesitating. I was like, I don't know if I should. I really don't know if I should, because I don't have anything to show them. That was one of those meetings where I had nothing to show. I had no materials, 0. So it was literally just me talking about the project, because it's so early stages. But it worked out in my favor, because I had seen a session with someone from history earlier in the day, I think it was, and they said that they're looking for stuff, like what kind of stuff they're looking for. And I was like, okay, I don't feel so shitty about not having materials now, because they're looking for stuff that's early stages. They want to get on board early stages with things. So I was like, perfect, this is great. So I went and sat down. I said, hello, how's your day going? And basically said, look, I have this project I'm working on. I'll just give you guys a brief overview of what the project is now. It's basically the CIBC Bank, which if you're in Canada, you would know what that is, which was in World War I known as or at that time known as the Canadian Bank of Commerce. They actually, the men that worked at the bank that went off to war, they compiled letters that they wrote from the front. And I happened to have books with these compiled letters. And I was like, this would be super cool. Like, it's a Canadian story. It's like World War story, like history should totally be into this kind of thing, I would think, or let's see. So I ended up pitching it and telling him about it. I'm like, would history be down for something like this? And he said, yeah, like send me more materials. So I got his business card, and that was it. Like, and it opened the door to History Channel. And in the end, to be honest, they didn't end up they didn't end up wanting to move forward with the project, because they're particularly looking for things that have big names involved, so like Hitler, or like people who are known in history. So these guys who worked at a bank are not known, but he did say, like, we're looking for all this other kind of stuff. You got any ideas? Feel free to send me any ideas over email. Let's chat. It opened up the door to somewhere where I didn't have a contact before. So sometimes you do take risks. Like for me, that was considered a risk, not having any materials at all to show and just the idea, but it ended up really working out well. It doesn't always work out that way, but I would say in general, my motto is just, Hitler's always a crowd pleaser. Yeah, pretty much. I would say my number one piece of advice is just go for it anyway, because you never know. And then sort of just with the last thing about speed pitching is you want to kind of I always go in having at least one idea. And this is kind of, actually doesn't apply just for speed pitching, it's for any pitching. I always have a back pocket of at least 2 to 3 other ideas that could apply kind of to various places. So, and I prep that ahead of time. I always say, okay, this is the main thing I'm going to talk about, but if they're not interested in that, I'm going to mention this idea and this idea, even if I don't have materials ready, because again, you never know what might spark something with someone. But yeah, in terms of a worst pitch experience, I don't really have one, but that so far, I'd say the history one has probably been my best experience, but I've had a lot of interesting good ones, so I can't really choose. So I'm going to talk about a few more pitching experiences that I've had outside of North America. Genghis Khan, yes. So when I went to the Busan Contents Market, which again, I really suggest you look into markets that are smaller, that are outside of North America, because you might get the biggest, be able to get into the door at the biggest places there. So for example, at the Busan Contents Market, almost all of the companies that were there were all of the major broadcasters in Korea, Japan, China. I got to sit down very easily with all of them, or a lot of them. Whereas in North America, it's much harder to get meetings like at the BBC or, even Netflix or places like that. It's really, really hard to get in the door because they're just so booked because everyone wants a piece of them. But when you go to these smaller markets, it's so easy. Like, I'm not even kidding, so easy to talk to them. So I had a great meeting with JTBC, which was one of like the top broadcasters in Korea. And I love the content they do, so it was great. And I basically became friends with this person that I ended up pitching to originally. Was an American living in Korea, so I guess that kind of helped. But yeah, and then after this event, I went to Seoul literally the day after this event ended, because Busan is like in the south of South Korea, so you have to actually go back to Seoul. But I went to Seoul and met with him again. So I was able to kind of keep that relationship going. And then I met with someone from like KBS, which is another huge broadcaster there. And yeah, so I ended up meeting with people twice within the same short period of time because I was strategic about my trip. And that's another thing to think about, is if you're going to a place, maybe extend a few days and go to the hub where all of these places are and try and set up meetings, a second meeting, like a follow-up meeting, because I really think that does help in fostering that relationship. And I did that, and it definitely helped. History Channel, I already kind of talked about that, so I won't go into that again. But that was a great experience. And then this is another one, which I'm sure you guys, based on the logos, are interested in hearing. Tell us the story of a project you pitched, sold, option, and what the deal looked like. Well, James, to be honest, right now I'm in talks with people, but nothing's actually officially been signed or sort of a deal. But I'm actively fostering and building these relationships, because I know for a fact that that's what's going to get me those deals. And I will tell you a story. It's coming. That's pretty close to that. So hold that thought. I will get to it. Lots of people get crap option offers. Yeah. I mean, I have nothing to compare it to, so I can't really answer that. But yes, I'm sure there are a lot of, I would say just in that case, just make sure your lawyer has your best interest for any deals. And make sure you, please God, do get lawyers, because I would never sign something without a lawyer looking at it first. So the Banff World Media Festival, I just want to talk to my experience about getting in the door at Netflix and Hulu. Because again, it's a lot of the big hump for people is, how do you even get in the door? So at the Banff World Media Festival, and I really suggest, if you're eligible, apply for it, which is the Netflix Banff Diversity of Voices Initiative. So if you're eligible, apply next year for sure. But that's what got me to the Banff in the first place. I wouldn't have gone otherwise. And I basically, because I was a part of this program with the other 99 people, there was like a lunch prepared for all of us on like the first day. So, and the guy from Netflix was there and did like a little speech, and it was basically just a lunch, but it was kind of, you're now in the room privately with Netflix. There's only 2 or 3 guys there from Netflix. So, and then there's 99 people who want a piece of them. So I'm like, the challenge now is seeing the opportunity and going for it. So I literally, this is exactly how it happened. I was getting, I think it was the event, the lunch hadn't even started yet. I got there early. This is another reason to get to places early. Yeah. Oh yeah. Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah. They often don't take public meetings. So that's why, and honestly, the only reason I got in the door was because I was a part of this initiative. I'm sure if I wasn't, I wouldn't have been able to talk to him. But I literally saw an opening. I saw him, he was sitting like a few tables across from me. And I'm like, he was talking to people, but I'm like, it's not busy. So now is my opportunity. So I had my business card. I went up to him. I said, hi, how are you? I introduced myself, and I said, thank you for being a part of this initiative. It's great. I have a show that I would love to discuss with you, because he particularly was like the sci-fi guy. Like, that's his department at Netflix on the development side. So it made sense for me to talk to him about my project, because my show was in that vein. So it's hard when your show is like a comedy. It's like, how do you ask to get in the door if you're not actually pitching to that particular person? But for me, it was, I guess, lucky in that sense. So I literally went up and I said, I would love to send you materials. Is that okay? And he said, yeah, sure. So he gave me his business card, and that was that. So it was the lesson there is literally when you spot the opening, go for it, even if you're nervous or whatever. And if you don't have anything prepared, just go for it, because you never know. As Lindsay said, it's like really hard to get the opportunity. So when you see an opening, like even a crack, go, because yeah, you never know when the next opening will happen. Hulu, to keep it kind of short, I was literally waiting to get lunch. The guy next to me was also waiting to get lunch from the restaurant in the hotel. I glanced over at who he was, because we're all wearing badges, and that's the lesson of the story is always look at who's around you, pay attention. And I saw he was from Hulu, and I was like, ding, hi, how are you? How's it going? How's your day going? Just started to strike up a conversation. Obviously, I didn't go right in with, I have a show to pitch you. It's like, you have to kind of strategically work that into the conversation. But anyway, more end of the story is I ended up getting his email, so I was able to pitch to him as well. And again, with this story, neither of them took the ideas that I pitched them, but I got the contact, which for most people is like the biggest hump to go over. So here's exactly what my next slide is not all meetings or pitches you will do actually result in something, but you've made the connection. So that's a huge, huge plus. Here's the thing where I want to talk about is live pitching. And I really highly recommend all of you look at opportunities for live pitching and competitions basically at these events, because those will actually open up a crap ton of doors. And I'll tell you a story that happened to me. Real Screen West, which is for, if you don't know, it's for unscripted television. I wasn't going to go. I just saw this, I think it was through an email. I honestly don't even remember how I found out about it, but I found this opportunity for this Formagination pitch competition, where basically you had to pitch a new format for a television, an unscripted show. So I was like, this looks fun. Why not try it out? Let's see if I can come up with something cool. So I literally, not joking, 2 days before the deadline, submitted something to this competition and became a finalist. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I ended up working with Armoza Formats, which is a huge format company. They're based in Israel, but they're global. And they 2 to 3 weeks before the event, they basically help you kind of solidify your pitch, make it pitch worthy for a live pitch. And then, yeah, I went up on stage, did the pitch. It's 4 minutes. It's not long. It goes by really fast. And I was pitching in front of 4 people, now owned by ITV. Yes, they, at the time, were not, Armoza got bought out by ITV. But yes, at the time they had, I guess, signed that deal yet. But anyway, I pitched to them in front of these 4 people. One was Avi Armoza from Armoza Formats. There was another guy from Facebook. What's his name? I can't remember. And then there was a woman from BET. And then there was a guy from Frappa, which is like how you register formats for unscripted TV. And they were on stage, but then it was open to an audience, so anyone could come and watch. I had no idea who was in the audience. There were people there, but I don't know who they were. They were people at the event. So I did the pitch. I ended up actually winning runner-up, which was awesome. And then after, I went outside and I was like, I need a celebratory drink, as I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. And someone from Warner Brothers came up to me and said, and he literally stopped me. He was like, hey, oh, you just did the live pitch. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I was watching. You did a great job. I think you should have won. Like, you did a really good job. Let's chat. And we got to talking and how he had this connection to Korea as well. And like, he's doing stuff in that market as well. And anyway, he's in the unscripted television side at Warner Brothers. But that was insane. Like that, he was in the audience. I didn't know, but it opened up that door, and to this day I'm still chatting with him and talking to them, and that idea that I pitched at that competition I'm still kind of in talks with them about. So moral of the story being, like, I didn't intend any of it, but it like I did it for fun, and sometimes it is just about doing things for fun because really you never know what's going to come out of it. So yeah, if there's any, do you guys have any questions about that story in particular? But I'm happy to answer them. But yeah, I really suggest you look at competitions. It is quite nerve-wracking, don't get me wrong. Like I was nervous, but once I'm on stage, I'm like, it's like performance mode. Thank you, James. But that, yeah, that opened up a lot of doors. Yeah, take chances, exactly. So I guess my next slide is if there's any questions before I get into post-market, just sort of closing up the webinar. But yeah, that story is probably, to answer your question, James, is probably my best experience because it really did open up huge doors, and the ripple effect of that was like I went to Real Screen Summit. So the things that I won as being a runner-up, I was able to go to Real Screen Summit, which happened in January. So I was able to then, again, follow up with people I met at Real Screen West, meet new people, foster new connections, and do more pitches. So that's where I did the pitch with history and with other things. But, you know, at Real Screen Summit, there was a round table 30 minutes with session with all the agencies. So like ICM, CAA, Innovative Artists, all these people. And so I went to that and, you know, talked to people about what I've done. And I mentioned this pitch competition, and most people know it in the unscripted space. They're aware of that competition. So it's a way to impress people, and it's like a wow factor and a branding tool. So that's another reason I would say to do those kinds of things, because it does become kind of a branding tool. And that's, you know, for example, the reason I wrote my book is to have a branding tool to say I wrote a book that's actually useful for people. So yeah, it is. I really, really suggest doing your research and looking at what possibilities there are. If we were there because we want a ticket to go on all the meetings. All the meetings were booked ahead of time. Oh, okay. So you literally were like thrown into it. Oh, my book is called Beyond the Director's Chair. There's another webinar happening on Monday where I'm talking to Norman Buckley, who I interviewed in the book. Please join that webinar. I will give information, or Rodney can type in information for that here in the chat. But Lindsay, I would say confidence is key in those situations because it is very like off the cuff, where you literally, it's almost like imagine yourself like a Rolodex of all your content in your head. And again, for someone like me, I don't know how many pieces of content you have, but I always have a plethora of different kinds of ideas that I just write down and have at least somewhat developed, because you never know, like in situations like that, where if it's an idea you just kind of have like a page on, or like very little development, but it's an idea nonetheless. When you get thrown into these pitches where you don't even really know who you're talking to, you find out like on the spot, that having that Rolodex, like having that sort of list of things you can refer back to in terms of content to pitch is really helpful, because then you literally are like, oh, you're looking for this? I have this idea, blah, 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 and you do the pitch. So my suggestion, my advice would be come up with other ideas. Like, as I said, I originally had no intention of being in the unscripted television space at all. And then I was like, you know, this is actually kind of fun. And I have a lot of ideas, and I didn't even kind of realize or recognize my ability to create a lot of formats and unscripted TV ideas. So I would really, really advise, like, go out of your comfort zone, look at things that maybe you wouldn't typically consider, and just come up with one idea. And just kind of keep it on the back burner, because again, in those kinds of situations in particular, it can be really useful to have basically options, because it's hard when you only have one project to talk about. And that's something that's one piece of advice I give to producers all the time, is you want to have at least three ideas. Thanks, Rodney, for putting that info there. Does that help, Lindsay, or can I answer another question? Okay, great. Yeah, that's my suggestion is, yeah, really have other ideas. Lots of ideas. So I'll have another question sort of section at the end, and we might go over by a few minutes, but is just post-market strategies that are pretty obvious, but you kind of have to do. They're like must-haves. Is you need to do email follow-ups. Never assume when you give your business card to someone that they're going to message you. Honestly, in my experience, rarely do I get people emailing me. And if they do, it's like a month later. So you have to take the initiative to follow up with people. Thank you, Stuart, for putting that link to my book. So yeah, you have to follow up with people because you have to be responsible for your situation and what you want out of it. So you want to be doing the following up. So I literally have, I'm kidding you not, envelopes full of business cards, and I literally go through, I actually separate them out. I go like my top ones, like my main ones that I want to follow up with that require like a bit more work, like putting together a pitch or what materials or what have you. Then I have like the people that are like, I met for the first time, but I could put together a pitch for. And then I have the third batch, which are like people that I met that I probably won't do business with, in being realistic, but I want to at least acknowledge that I met them and say, you know, it was great meeting you. So I kind of like separate them out that way. And I just literally go in order and I go down the list and one by one, and I just follow up with them. It takes time. It takes about a week or two to follow up with everybody, and it can be exhausting, but you do have to do it. And I would say do it within the week you get back or the week or two that you get back, because that's when those people are getting inundated with all the post-market stuff. So you want to be in that batch while they're still being active, because if you wait like a month, they're going to be already in the deep shit that they're in with all the other stuff. And yes, should each email be personalized, you mean? Yes. I usually use a template, but then I personalize it always, for sure. And with, you know, emailing back and forth with people with the check-ins and stuff. So when let's say I sent an email to history, I waited about 2 weeks or a week and a half, 2 weeks before following up. So you want to be patient because these people are really busy. Especially in the development side, these development executives are extremely busy. So you have to respect their time, but you also don't want to lose track of them. Like you don't want to be like, well, it's been like 3 months. I'm sure they've looked at it. No, you want to kind of like, give it 2 weeks, and if they haven't had a chance, and you're like, okay, no problem, I'll follow up, you know, in a few more weeks. No big deal, like kind of thing. If they're really into it, like it's obviously helpful when they're kind of really passionate about it too, or really like you. Like for example, with History Channel, I had a phone call meeting. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks after the event with someone else, like one of the other people in the department, and that phone call was kind of really a nice way to connect with him other than just over email. And it kind of kept the relationship going at a different level. So it kind of depends, but you want to try your best to stay on top of things, because they trust me when I say they will not. So you need to be on top of it. And just don't pester them. That's not going to help your career. Just you don't want to burn bridges or annoy people. Just be strategic, be reasonable. And then on that same note, I think in terms of relationship building, email is usually the best way to stay in touch with people, email and phone. LinkedIn, how many of you use LinkedIn on a regular basis? I use it like pretty much every day or every other day. You hate it so much. Rodney, why? Daily, good. LinkedIn, Romy, I really suggest you use it because it's a really great way to keep professional connections outside of email correspondence. And it is a good branding tool as well, because for example, like I definitely have over 500 connections. I think I have about 800 something now. So every time I go to these events, I connect, especially if it's like major people, like the people from Warner Brothers or History Channel or what have you, or Netflix. I try to connect with them on LinkedIn, because then when I try to connect with other people, they see who I'm connected to. Because I don't know about you guys, but I definitely look at who other people's connections are. So sure, but like it's still a good tool, even if Microsoft's not doing much with it. But I think it's a good branding tool, because people care about like who you know. It is a business about who you're connected to. So if you're not using it, or if you don't like it, I would say start to like it, because it is a great way to stay in touch with people and basically build your brand outside of email and actually in-person connection. And then Instagram, I find Instagram, Facebook, whatever, I'm hesitant often to connect with people on those platforms unless it's like I'm really close to them. But it is another way to stay connected. Like, for example, the Netflix person, I followed him. And just to kind of, because I don't have any other shows right now to pitch him, I just kind of want to stay on his radar and like, what is he up to? Maybe I'll comment on something every now and again, just so he kind of still knows I exist. You know, so it is kind of another way, but I'd say be careful about how you connect on social media in that way. But at professional stuff, LinkedIn is I really suggest you start building your LinkedIn profiles. So if any of you want to connect on LinkedIn, find me on LinkedIn and I'm happy to connect. So are there any final questions? Producer follows your IG page. Is that an opportunity to introduce myself via DM because maybe producer discover the project? Yeah, totally. Again, it's all about seeing opportunities. I mean, if they connected with you, I would say go for it. Like, send a DM, still keep it professional, because I wouldn't be like, hey man, what's up? Like, how's your day going? Like, you know, it's like, hi, I saw you connected. That's awesome. Would love to discuss further, you know? I would totally take advantage of opportunities like that for sure, because especially if they find you, that's amazing. Of course, Sophia, thank you for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Stuart. Yes, so the last thing I want to offer is just a free strategy call. Again, if any of you want to chat about your projects in particular, or just to brainstorm, literally it's just a brainstorm session, all you have to do is, in exchange for that, is just to write about today's webinar. And I'm happy to give you my ideas on what I suggest you can do. Awesome, Patrick. And be sure to please do share a win on social media about today's webinar and just something you got out of today. And please tag WebSeries Canada. Lindsay, if you send me an email, which is here, if you send me an email, I can send you a list of some. Did you get the email? Okay, cool. Yes, so thank you everybody for joining. I hope you all enjoyed it. Was it good? Was today helpful in any way? Yes. Great. Yay! And again, if there's any questions you have after this, please send me an email, a message, and I'm happy to answer them. No problem, Leslie, it's okay. So yeah, thanks guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day and week. And be sure, yes, if you like today, I'm doing another one on Monday with Norman Buckley. He's a director. We're going to talk all things directing, and it's going to be great. So see you guys soon. Bye. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.